we're going to be doing a snowy village scene in village in. I've actually found out where I did this, uh, uh, and I did it sitting in a car, sort of perched on my steering wheel. And I really unknown Devon Village, 2009, because I just couldn't remember. But I think it's a village called Iddesleigh in Devon, and I thought we'd use this as the subject for the second and last of the snowy scenes. Now, there isn't a photograph for this particular subject today. It is the only information I have is here. So if people haven't seen it, I'm happy to have these perched nearby. But how much they change from how much the painting changes from what I have here, we'll wait to see, because I'm not actually working from a photograph. Actually, it's quite nice to do that. But I think that's the first time in any of the online classes I've done that I've done it this way. One or two points just before we get going, and again, I have mentioned this before, and people who are new to it may not have heard it. Just a brief word on materials and the method that I'm using to tutor this. The materials simply, this paper that I'm using here is a rag content, good quality watercolor paper. It's 300 grams per square meter, or 140 pounds. It's the texture of it is cold pressed, or that is often known as knot, N-O-T. But the point about this, it is a nice, really good quality Saunders Waterford paper. This, in fact, there are lots of many good makes here, but it is a rag content, and it allows the paper to absorb the water and the paint really very much better than a more smooth surface paper. So that's the paper. This is about 14 inches by 11 because I've cut it up from a larger sheet. The paints that I have here are the ones that Lois put out on her information to you. They're exactly as the information you've got here. I'll mention the color of each one I'm using, and if you don't get it, please do ask. These are all artist quality paints. I think they're all Winsor & Newton, and they are in the main transparent, translucent paint. One or two are less so, but we can talk about that later if somebody wants to know what I mean by that. And lastly, the brushes that I'm going to use today are probably going to be these ones here, and I will mention each of these brushes as I go through them, and if I fail to do so, please just ask, and I'll go through it again. So I won't tell you what they all are now, but if I can remember as I pick them up, I'll try and remind you what they are. That's the materials and covered. As far as the methods covered, I'm breaking this, as I have, I think, pretty much every other one I've done, watercolor into 4 sections, 4 steps, and I will go through these all slowly as we get to them. Very quickly, the first one is composition and drawing. The second is washes. The next one is putting in colors and darker colors. And then the last one is any details that needed to be added to finish the painting. Right. Now, one thing before I get on to this particular scene we're talking about, and that is, and I did show this 2 weeks ago, but something on color, and in particular color in relationship to painting a cold winter scene. I showed this picture 2 weeks ago. This was taken by a friend of mine in Devon just a couple of weeks ago. And the reason I'm showing it to you now is just to point out to you how the warm yellow and orange colors of the setting sun here, in relationship to what is in front of it, the foreground and the middle ground and the foreground, makes this seem a lot colder. Just putting the warm colors against the cool colors, which are naturally cool anyway, makes the cool colors appear colder. And that's something that came across very much in this painting we did last week, where I was trying to point out that putting some warm colors against areas that you want to be cooler makes them look cooler. But I'll show you this painting, and this is last I'll show you before we move on. An artist called Edward Siego, British artist, and this particular watercolor of his, glorious, very loose watercolor. It's in quite a contrast to the strong colors here, but these are very subtle colors. But even so, Siego has made use of a slight warmth in the sky here, slightly warm yellow, and the reds in this sort of mauve color he's got here. He's put those in to make the rest of the picture appear colder. In fact, even in these little shadows here, he's dropped in some warm browns, just ever so slightly, ever so with ever such a light touch. But that is very much and very subtly using warm colors to make the colors next to them appear much colder. Right. So with these pictures here, I have chosen this subject because there's a lot of snow in it, and also different from 2 weeks ago. There are slightly more tricky drawings involved. There's a little bit more perspective, and there's a little bit more possibly depth, certainly perspective, and one or two buildings. So in the first step, which as I said, is really, it's almost two steps. The first step, you're considering what your composition might be, and then you're making a drawing on the paper to help you then go on and paint it. So in terms of composition, we have a view of a road disappearing behind this building here. In the background is a church, and in front of that, in the middle distance, if you like, are a couple of buildings. The perspective is of them going away from you into this. You're almost being led around the corner here in terms of the composition. And then this building in the foreground very much has got the lines taking you into and around the corner of this building, and these trees here help to accentuate some of the lightness that is in the snow, and I've also included some sort of distant trees here, and I'll show you how I'm going to attempt all that later on. A lot of the paper is just left, and as I'm going to suggest in your painting today, is left bare paper, because that's going to be the snow. It's what we put against it by way of cool colors and warm colors, which hopefully will emphasize the fact it is snow and also create a coldness to this winter snowy scene. So I don't know, I'll put those there out of the way. Come down here a bit. I'll snip those. I will leave those there in case anyone hasn't got them. So you got an idea. I'm just cutting these pictures down to size so they'll slot in there a bit better. Is that okay? And this one. Yeah, this I did this. In fact, I'd forgotten which sketchbook they were in, and I spent a large part this morning hunting around my sketchbooks and just found it a short while before this session started. And the actual sketchbook, just if you're interested, is this one here. And so I've obviously copied the pictures on here and sent those out to you. So that's the drawing. I think I probably did that first, but I spent very little time on either of them, and that's where we're going with this painting today. Okay, I'm going to spend a little bit longer than I might normally spend on this drawing, really just to help anyone who's having a little bit of a problem with the perspective. Here we go. What I think is important when you're thinking in terms of perspective is to get an idea of where your eye level will be. Let's just get rid of the drawing for a moment and stick with that. And the eye level is somewhere around here where the road disappears. So if I put my pencil there, that line's a really important line. It's probably the most important line in the drawing, because in simple artistic terms, a simple perspective for the artist, that is, anything that is immediately in front of you is going to be horizontal, like we have my pencil there. And indeed, anything which is vertical will always be vertical, wherever it is, however close or far away it is, already vertical. What we're interested here in getting perspective is what happens when things are going away from you. And this is, in fact, what we call linear perspective, but that's just the word that's given to it. And the way that you help yourself to understand that is that anything that is above this line that I've drawn here is will come and going away from you will come down to the line. Can you see the bottom of the roof comes down to the line there? Can you see this building here? It's going away from you. It's coming down. And the higher up it is, the more extreme that will be. We've still kept all our verticals. Okay, and we're still aware of roughly where your eye level is. Conversely, anything that is below your eye level will come up to that line. And this is a prime example here, coming up to the line. Anything that's on that level, on that straight line, will more or less be a straight line. So when we come to draw these windows, the bottom of the windows and the tops of the doors and everything, just sketch them in. I'll bring that to your attention again. But as long as you're aware of the drawing I'm doing is just trying to get some idea of the perspective, which helps to give the impression of everything going away from us. So let's put that there. Begin. I'm going to start off by drawing that edge here. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll put in an imaginary eye level there. That might help. I'll get rid of that later on. That might help you. So that's the equivalent of where I had the pencil. Right? And here we go. So we've got this building on the right is the top of it is above our eye level, and it comes up to us here. So out of the way a moment. So it's going to do something like that, coming down to it. And the bottom of it, the bottom of this side of the building is below our eye level. And so it's going to do something like that. You can rub it up, move it around if you feel it's not working quite rightly. And as things go up above us here, this rooftop goes something like that. I'm going to put some sort of a chimney. Now, even this chimney, I hope you can see that, the top of it will go that way. You see, that way, because it's coming down to it. And the other side of the chimney, which is going away the other way, will go that way. Vertical's still the same. And that goes up that way. So we've established something of that building. I'll come back to the building to do all the windows. So I'm taking a little bit longer with this section than I might normally do in just drawing it up quickly, because I'd like you just, those of you who are having a problem with understanding. And now this building in the middle, you can put it wherever you like. I've actually got it going away from me slightly. So I'm going to do something like, that's the gable end there. That's the vertical, comes down. And because the top of it is going away, it comes down that way and down that way. And it's going to be I don't actually want to make too much of a feature of that. That's going to be a building there. And then this building here on the left, in fact, it's positioned between the two. So let's just start about here. The bottom of it is going to be above the bottom of that one because it's away from us. And we're going to take, can you see the way I'm making that line and this line? Something like that. That's going to be the gable end of it. And that's essentially the bottom of that can more or less be the same. So in terms of those three buildings that are shown in this composition, there we go. I'm going to put the church in a moment, but I'll just go back and see if I can make the point about now the door. So let's just,
Mike, could you go through the angles on the chimney again? Someone's asking.
Right. Okay. Let's go back to this chimney. If you think about it, as you're looking at the building, the top, the chimney, as with the building, is going away from you. So can you see how I've given it that angle? It's probably it's an even more extreme angle than this one because it's higher up. But the other side is coming the other way, so it's going that way, and that's how you're going to get the chimney to look reasonably as if it's going there. Let's stick a.
Sorry, it was the bottom bit of the chimney that she was finding confusing, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm confused. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing with that. So you're quite right. So I hope you wouldn't notice that. It's going to be, it follows the same rules. It's going to be something like that. Anyway, you can cover it in snow. We can cover as much of this in snow as you like. So let's put a, where should we put a chimney? Let's put a chimney here. And this chimney is going that way a little bit. And it's going more or less straight that way. We're not going to get too bothered in details. We might put another chimney here. Maybe, no, I'll stick it up there. Yeah, cover it in snow anyway. Right. One or two things. Now you can put your doors and windows as many as you like or as little as you like. So I'm going to stick say we're going to stick a doorway here. The vertical is always going to be the same. But because if you want to work out where you're going to put the top of that, it's just above the level. So it's going to be only just a little bit like that. And in fact, just to make a point, I'll have a big window here, which will more or less run along that line. But because the bottom of it is below the eye level, let's put another one in here. It's going to be much the same sort of thing. Okay, something like that. I'm not going to make too much of a the feature of these doors. Let's put a door in here, and a window. And put some windows in here. Let's put a window in here, which is going to, a lot of it's going to be lost on the snow. The verticals will be the same, but because the bottom of it is above our eye level, it's going to be something like that. Put another one there above the door. Going to be something like that. Not quite horizontal, just slightly sloping. And then this one here. Okay. So that's a great big long house that we've got there. I'm not going to worry too much about that. Let's put a couple of windows in here. You can add windows. I'm going to leave this blank, but you can add. You can do what you like, because I'm sure I didn't even follow too much what I saw in front of me in Iddesleigh. But this is Iddesleigh Church. I do. All right, the church in the background. I think I will draw that in. In fact, this is. I'm going to make this house a bit lower, I think. Bring it down here a bit more. Just seems to be too much up in the sky, just a little bit like that. And the church, well, let's have that off to the left a little bit, something like that. And I'll even have the church going away from me slightly. So I'm going to go up a little bit like that. And down a little bit like that. All right, so maybe that's my church. There's some sort of window there. I'm going to take a little bit of time, and I suggest it would help you if you do that, to put in some snow. So we'll have just put in some snow here, particularly on the window ledges hanging down like so. On top of this doorway, underneath there's a snow piled up, maybe on the coming down like so, and probably piled up against the doorway a little bit along this ledge. So I'm drawing in the snow because that would be helpful, because I want to leave that, the areas that are covered in snow. Let's put a, this is, and there's going to be mounds of snow here. And the road comes around, something like that. And let's put a tree covered in snow here. And then snow coming up onto this building. You put the snow wherever you like. You don't draw any snow on top of the church, because that's too far away really to see what's going on. And we can have the snow mounds as you want. I'm going to put a little tree here, I think, which has got snow on it. And mounds of snow. Don't worry about this so much. It's just useful to have drawn in the big blocks of snow so that you know you're going to leave that alone when you come to put the paint on it. So and I've spent longer on that than I would normally do, because I just wanted to point out the structure of the perspective, that we've got this building is the one nearest us. We're looking down the village this way, and so we're seeing the perspective of this building here, including, I haven't put any trees or anything like that in just yet. We've got this building in the background, which you can have straight onto you or whatever, but I've got it going away slightly. and I would hope that that doesn't feature too much in my painting. And then we got this here. Now, one of the things about a snowy day like this, compared with even this picture we did before, where there was a bit of sunshine here. This one, I'm trying to get the feeling that there is no sunshine as such. In fact, the sky is going to be lit up a yellow in the background here, but it's a very even sort of light, even sort of shadows, all of that compared with what we did 2 weeks ago. And hopefully, as we progress with our painting, you'll see how I'm going to do that. So there isn't, as in a Tuscan scene, there isn't strong sunlight coming from one side, casting shadows and all that. The less we have those cast shadows, the more wintry, hopefully, that this scene will appear. I've done all my drawing that I want to do here for the moment. You've probably been drawing as we go along, but let's just see how you're getting on with that.
Mike, could you explain how to make the road draw the eye around the corner?
This bit here.
Yeah.
So the bottom of the house is here, and there's a mound of snow coming up onto it. Because of the way I've created this perspective, I've just brought that line round here, and I've got this line. If you think about it, it's coming more at me than this line, and that's because perspective wise, I mean, if perspective wise, things move around like this, just as things move around like that at the top. I've got a bit of space in between the two, so I've put in some mounds of snow there. I've created, we can't see a great deal here, just get the idea that we're going behind the building. The road goes round to our right, and then I brought that line around here. It's all following the rules of perspective that I was talking about. If you're having problems with this perspective, don't worry about it. It took the Renaissance artists about 400 or 500 years to get their heads around this after the medieval ages. The art of perspective, particularly linear perspective, which is basically what I'm drawing lines, was something that the Renaissance artists had to relearn after the Greek and Roman times, after several hundred years of medieval Christian paintings, when the important people were drawn bigger than the less important people and so forth. And then all of a sudden comes along the Renaissance, and they want people to be drawn much more as they are in real life. If they're closer to you, they're larger. If they're further away from you, they're smaller. Same here with the building. This is the closest bit to us. It's the largest bit of the building, and it goes down and away from us like that. What is really useful is to have some sort of line where you can understand roughly where your eye level is. Things above it come down, things below it that are going away from you anyway come up. Just to remind you that if anything is directly in front of you, in other words, it's horizontal to you, then it's always going to be horizontal, whether it's feels away or it's right up in front of you. Sometimes you might wonder, when you get your photographs back or you take photographs, you think, well, these buildings are all leaning in odd ways. The only building I know that leans in odd ways is the one in Pisa. What happens is there's a thing called parallax, which creates, because of the lens you're using, but we are talking about things being horizontal in front of you, and if they're vertical, then they're all vertical. So what I'm interested in is anything that's going away from you, which is above your eye level or below your eye level. And your eye level will change depending on whether you're standing up, painting from a window, sitting on the ground, or whatever. Wherever your eye level is, that's the useful guide. And if you get an imaginary line, as I've drawn there, that's very helpful. And if things are going away from you and they are above your eye level, that imaginary line of your eye level, then they're going to come down in some angle. Let's not talk about the angles. They're just going to come down to that line. And the converse applies, that if they are below your eye level, they're going to come up to it. And I think if I can just point this out, that this building here, which let me go back, make sure that this makes sense. Just go back to, this building that I started off with, the vertical, that end, which I drew first, is vertical, but the top of the building is going away from me. And can you see that is going, keep still. Let's find something that will keep still. That's going that way. And the bottom of it is going that way. So the building is bigger where we are up close to it, and it's going smaller and smaller. And that's roughly how, and I find this a very useful thing as an artist, wherever you go. I'm not thinking in terms of vanishing points and all that. That's all too complicated for me. I'm just thinking of this imaginary line, which is the line of my eyesight. So let's look at the building on the right. I'll move it across to there. There is the edge of it, and there is the bottom part of the building covered in snow, and the top of the building, quite a lot of snow on the roof there. And it's doing the same sort of thing. Even the very slight twist of the church is doing the chimney is doing the same thing. So you asked about the doors, buildings. So here is a door. It's vertical, and I brought it up to the top of it, up to here, which is just above my eye level. So it's just slightly sloping that way. In fact, I've deliberately made this window verticals same, verticals. I deliberately made that window on my eye level, roughly. And so it's pretty much horizontal line, but the bottom of it, which is covered in snow, is that.
Someone's asking you, Mike, is the eye level the same as the horizon?
No, not always, no. And if you can just stand and project out and imagine a sort of a laser beam that cuts through. I think actually probably my eye level's a bit lower than I've drawn it there, but it doesn't matter. It's sort of roughly here where the road disappears. Anyway, think about it. I know those of you who are engineers, and I've always on my courses, there's always someone who's been an architect or a civil engineer, and they will shoot me down in flames over this. But I'm talking about simple artists here, and this is the way that it helps me work out my perspective. This is called linear perspective. When things get faded and bluer and in the distance, as we're going to be doing in a moment, that's known as atmospheric perspective. That's something we're going to be doing in a moment. The more you can sort of get rid of the worry about perspective, the more you can get on with doing your drawing. So something simple like your eye level, and what's above it goes down, and what's below it goes up, and everything horizontal in front of you is the same, and everything vertical is the same. And just go with that and see whether that helps you. Anyway, that was the reason that I brought this particular subject in, so I could spend some time on this. And do you mind, everyone, if we just move on now? Because I think we need to, I want to try and paint this as simply as I can, but we do need now to go to the second step in this watercolor painting, which is washes. Now, in this particular scene, I want to leave the bare paper to do as much of the talk about the snow, tell us as much about the snow as possible. So what I'm going to do is take a little leaf out of this book here, but not as drastic as that sky. And I'm going to, and in fact, you can see I've obviously splashed some yellow paint around in this painting I did at Iddesleigh. So I'm going to make my sky a warmish yellow here, going up and then getting into a sort of grey colour. I'm going to bring that down to over the church, down onto these buildings. Don't worry about the trees and everything else like that. And I'm just going to do that as my second stage. So I'm going to show you how I go ahead with that, and I'll get started on that. And there are lots of, by the way, lots of pencil lines on here, which we can rub out later on. I've been using a 4B, a soft pencil, which is quite helpful when you want to come and rub things out later on. It's only just made a light mark on the paper, and it hasn't dug into the paper. So I'm going to use this, it's the biggest brush I'm using. It's a squirrel haired mop brush, anything that holds a lot of water. And the great thing about this brush is, as you can see, it goes to a nice point. That's full of water now, and it goes to a nice point. If I flick the paint away from me, okay, that's lost a lot of the water in the brush, but it's quite a nice point. But I'm going to use it because I want to I want to create a wash. It's a good thing for a wash, this. When we've done this wash, and it won't take long to do, then we need to let it dry, bone dry, before we move on to the third phase. So the wash. I'm going to use, I've got 3 yellows here, a new gamboge, a Aurelian, and a lemon yellow. The lemon yellow is the coolest of them all. Then the Aurelian, which is pretty similar to a cadmium yellow, is the middle one. And then this new gamboge is the warmest of them. It's got more red in it here. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to use one of these, but whichever one I do, if I use this one, I'm going to add some red, some of this Windsor red into it, because I want it to be quite warm, this sky. This is going to be what I was talking about, and I showed you in the photograph before. This is going to be helping to create the warmth in the background, which helps to make everything else a little bit colder here. And I'm going to bring in some grayness to the sky here, which I'll show you how I'll mix that together. So let's put the yellow down and let's see what's happening. So I think I'll try the Aurelian. Let's just see, and add a little bit of red to it, so it's almost orangey. Let's make that. Yeah, that's warmed it up a bit. So I've got a good brush full of that in here. I'm going to be adding more water to it in a moment. So let's put that warm yellow in here. It can go around the buildings, include this little one at the background here. You can go around here. As it goes away and up, out, then it's going to weaken off. Let's just see. If I want to make that, at this stage, if I wanted to make it a little bit warmer, I could just pick up a little bit of red. I'll do that just to show you, and bring that in here. Just a little bit of red, just warms it up. And I'm then going to move that out here. Now there's lots of water here, so it's sort of painting itself a little bit. And I'm going to put in some grey of the sky here and let that merge in. So I'm going to use some cerulean blue. Cerulean blue. Let's put a little bit of this, tiny little bit of this red in, because that's going to grey it down. And let's see if that's probably going to be fine, like that. and it can meet up with the yellow paint, no worries. And a lot of it's going to be covered with trees anyway. Now, if you went ahead at this stage and dried it with your hairdryer, then it wouldn't achieve what I want to do, is a sort of blending in of the colors here. What I can do, and you can do also, is to maybe tip it up this way a little bit and just let the yellow work its way into this other colors here. Whichever way round you want to do that, that is just fine. So I'm going to do that here. That's all the wash that we're going to do for the moment. Okay, so this second stage of the painting, we're going to leave all of this here. And you'll see why I'm going to do that in a moment. And I'm just going to let that work its way. I don't want, I'd like this to blend a little bit more, but I don't want to come back in now with a brush, even if it's a completely dry brush, because I could end up with sort of funny marks, blossoms and things going on here. I'll just have confidence in the water and in the paint that it will do its own thing. So whilst you're doing that, and it shouldn't take you too long, I'm just going to leave that as long as possible. I'm going to turn it up completely vertical and only get my hair dryer onto it at the last moment. Okay, everyone, that's the second step in this painting. This bit of, as with all watercolor painting, but this little bit of the painting relies on you just being aware of how much water you have on your paper and how much water you have on your brush. And that applies to everything you do with watercolor. But so we're going to be putting water on here, and I'm going to try not to flood it. I just want it to be moist. And then I'm going to bring paint onto it. But if I make that paint in my brush too wet, it's going to bloom a little bit. But if I can afford to put a fairly dry paint onto a wet surface, and the water will do its thing. Now I'm going to take from my sketch this green here, this sort of dark green, and I'm going to try and get some areas soft and some a little harder, because that's the sort of the background. And I think I'll paint this church. I'm going to use a sort of mauvey color. I'm going to steal an idea from Edward Ciego here. No harm in pinching other artists' idea. I like this mauve color that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to use something a bit mauvey with my green. And I'm going to see if I can mix the two so that the church goes into the distance a bit. When that is dry, I'm going to come in, as I've done here, with some harder edge trees, just to finish it off. That might even be it in the last stage of the painting. Right. So I'll tell you the colors I'm going to use, so you know what I'm doing in advance. I'm going to, I've got a color here I'm pointing at. Let's get this in view, which is sap green. It's what I call a convenience green. I've got three colors, I've got three colors minimum, which I call convenience. They're all secondary colors. There's the orange, which is Windsor orange here. There's the mauve, which is a permanent mauve, which is here. And then there's the sap green, which is some sort of middle type of green. Now, all of these you can make yourself if you haven't got them. So the green that I'm going to use, you can make by mixing beryllium or cadmium with probably cobalt, something like that, equally, the other two colors, the mauve, I'm not going to use this orange, but the mauve can be made by mixing ultramarine blue with a bit of crimson, giving you a sort of mauve is just basically a purple. But they're called convenience colors because it means I can just go straight to them and mix them up. Interestingly, when I paint in acrylics and oil paints, I don't have these colors. I just always mix them. I've always done that. But in watercolor, sometimes it's quite useful, I find. So I'm going to be wetting this in a moment. And then I'm going to be using these colors here. But the critical thing is to know how much water is on my paper and how much in the brush. So I'm picking up clear water here. And there's no reason why I can't. I'll tell you what, I'll wet all of it. If you're spraying it, go ahead and spray all of it. And I really don't want to make it too wet. And in fact, if anything, I might even dry it off a little bit with some tissue. How do you know how wet you got it? Well, hold it at an angle and see what's going on. There we are. That's quite wet at the moment. So moving to this brush, which is a squirrel brush, and it also is good at picking up water and coming to a point. And I'm going to put in some green. So let's just take some of this sap green, or if you mix it with a cadmium or beryllium and a bit of cobalt, but it's really convenient just to have something. That's too strong, too bright a green here. So I'm going to add a little bit of this mauve to it, just a little bit. I don't want it to be too strong, nor do I want it to be too wet. So let's just add a little bit. So that's what I've got here.
Can you repeat what the mauve color was?
It's a mixture of ultramarine blue and crimson red, or as I've got here, it's straight out of the tube, permanent mauve. So I'm going to put in something here. So let's just make that a bit greener, I think. Let's just see if we see. This is a bit wet here. That's fine. And hopefully the damp paper is going to be doing something with it. I'm going to switch to this little rigger brush here and pick up some of that color and just make a few little marks, which is going to be, is more water here than there is over there. So let's just leave that a little bit for the moment. Just a few little tree marks. So I'm switching between my brushes. And this is going to be something that's just showing over the background. Let's just mix up some more paint. I don't want to make that too wet now. So that's quite wet. So let's just, I'm conscious it's wetter over here, and that's fine. In fact, I wouldn't mind it being a bit wetter, so I'll just make one or two marks here. I'm avoiding any snow, and I want to leave some of the sky showing through, so I don't want to overcook this. Let's go for a much stronger color. Colors always dry lighter, of course. So that's just some suggestion of the background. I can bring some of that down here a little bit. I'm going to be going over that with something a little stronger later on. Okay, that's made one or two little marks there. Now, how wet is that? I think I need to wet again this church. I want it, it's probably gone a bit too dry here. So let's just, a bit of water. Now, this is where I want to make my marks with, are conscious of how wet that area is. So let's go for as strong a paint as I can get. And that's a little bit too wet. So let's see what we can do with that. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just damp it down briefly and then paint in the church. I want to leave, if possible, some light coming through a window. You've just got to do it and hope for the best, really.
What are the criteria for how to know whether you want wet to go dry on wet or wet on wet or wet on dry?
It is there's as I was saying, there's a little bit of hoping for the best. And you see what I mean? And just a bit of trial and error, a little bit of experience, and an awful lot of luck. Okay, so I want to put a couple of little I won't do too much there because I didn't put any water there. So let's just leave that. And if you wanted to, if you put some drier paint over that, you can see how you're. I don't want to overcook this, but as the paper dries, so you get harder marks there. And sometimes if you put a hard mark against a soft mark, it makes the two work quite nicely together. So let's put a hard mark there. Yeah. Right. I think I'll come back later on and put some other trees in there. That's just giving a sort of background, and the church is in the background a little bit. Try not to fiddle with it. Just let it be what it is. Let's have a look. I'll use the cooler blue, which is cerulean blue here. See that? Yeah, bit of blue. And I'm going to add to that a little bit of a red, but not the red I used before, but a burnt sienna, just a little bit of burnt sienna. That will help to grey it down. I'll put a little bit of raw sienna in, which is a yellow in effect. Now go back to a bit of blue. So you make up whatever grey you want, and you'll see what I'm going to use there. It's going to be that sort. Now remember, we don't necessarily have any strong shadows in here, but I'll show you how we'll soften the shadows in a moment. So I'm going to put, yeah, it's a little bit too blue. So let's add a bit burnt sienna, a bit of raw sienna, and then I'm going to take that, you see, up to where the snow is along the edge here. Leave little bits of gaps where the snow might be. It's not quite so critical on this building as it will be on this building, but the overall effect will be that there's snow here. Taking that up. And there's lots of snow on the ground, so I'll just leave that a moment there. But I talked about adding something a little bit warm, so I'm just going to pick up some burnt sienna and put a little touch of it there, and maybe just a little touch of it there where some of the chimney might be showing with the snow that's around it, a little bit there. And for these windows, I'll mix the two together and see what happens. I'll make them a little bit darker with just a little bit of blue, maybe. Really, you'll find you choose whatever colors you want for this. Quite often, the colors you choose are just what happens to be on your palette. I just want something a little bit grayer to touch in here. We'll come back to that. That's the extent that I'm going to do on that building. Now, I talked about there being a snow covering a tree here. So let's go to my sap green and add a bit of purple to that, maybe. Whoa, that's way too purple. So let's come over that, something a little bit. And I'm going to make that a bit greener. I'm going to put some, this is coming up to the snow. The snow's falling down and it's making mounds here. So hopefully we can make that look a little bit like the snow falling down there in a moment. And I'll do, because I'm working from left to right, and I'll paint in some of the snow that's happening here, so you can get an idea of what I'm going to do. So I think what I'll do is I'll put in some cooler colors. So let's go to cerulean blue. I don't want that to be quite as strong as that just at the moment. So I'll just, I'll add a bit of this, just a little bit of that. And here I'm going to touch in, if you like, the shadows, where the paint, so we got snow on one side and some shadows here, and you make this up underneath these ledges a little bit, and just with a light touch. And as things go away from you, so they often become flatter, more horizontal, whereas here, for instance, I can have what might be the edge of snow like that. Down here, it's going to be a little softer, just there. I can come back and do some more here. And also, whilst some of this is a little bit wet on the page, with a dry brush, picking up a little bit, let's say pick up something warm, some burnt sienna. I was talking about this being about using warm colors. Let's just drop a little bit in, maybe to the edge of some of these this is quite light touch painting here, so you can afford to be fairly delicate with it. We can come back and do some more, just 1 or 2 little touches of red there just to set it off, and that helps to darken it a little bit. I'm going to move on to this building here, and I'm going to again make that. Now this is going to be a little less distinct, this building, so again I'll use the cerulean blue. I'll create some kind of a, in fact I'll make it a little bit of, basically your grays are going to be blue, yellow and red. In some combination you're going to make a gray out of blue, yellow and red, however you make it. And it's a question of you as whether you wanted a greeny blue or a more bluey blue, or a warmer blue, or whatever it is. I'm trying to keep my colors fairly cool here just for the moment. So I've mixed up it's not very dissimilar from the other one. It doesn't matter. So I'll put that here, leave room for snow. We'll come back and emphasize that a little bit. There's a sort of tree there, which that's the building. I don't think I want to get too distinct with anything here just at the moment. I said I was going to put a little tree there, so let's pick up some of this green that I used before and put something ever so slightly green there. Colors are fairly washed out in the snow, leaving a little bit of white there for the snow that's on it. Okay, I may come in and do more to this in a moment, but let's just move on here, and I'll make this a slightly warmer sort of grey color, ever so slightly. So let's see, maybe I'll use a cobalt blue as opposed to a cerulean, because that's a warmer blue. Let's see what happens if I do that. And mix, again, I'll mix some burnt sienna into it. Now, if I had taken a photograph of this, you could be pointing out all sorts of errors that I'm making in it, but because we're just working from a sketch that I did at the time, no worries at all. So I'm going to, there's a slightly more grey here, and I'll take that over the windows, because we'll come back to those in a moment, and I'm going to bring in some shadows later, so we don't worry about those just a moment. We're going to take this around the tops of the snow. That's why I was quite firm with my pencil marks at the start, so that it just helped me to remember where I might be putting snow. I'm going to make this door a warm doorway, I think. That's going to be, I've run out of grey, so let's mix up something. How do I do that? Bit of cobalt, a little bit of burnt sienna, something like that. And let's put a doorway in here. I'll use the burnt sienna again. Just something a bit warmer there. That may or may not do the trick. We'll worry about that a little bit later on. And but what I'll do is I'll put a bit of chimney up here. which is showing. And I think I'll also, I've mixed up this burnt sienna again, and so whereas if we're painting in Tuscany and everything, we might be tempted to make some really strong shadows with the wonderful sunlight and everything. Here I'm trying to subdue it down just a little bit on that. So let's go back to putting some marks in here and the snow. I think I used cerulean blue. I'm sort of coming back to what was going on here. A bit of cerulean blue. And now you can make up your mind how virgin you want this snow to be. Whether you want to have car marks or foot marks or something like that. I think that a lot of that will tell you what's happening with the snow and what sort of conditions they are there. Let's put in some if you want to put paw marks in, you're very welcome to do that. Dog that's walked down there, whatever. So we're in the position of you're just making up really where your snow is going. As I did here, I'm going to add a bit of grey to these windows. So hunt around in my palette, see if there's something sludgy that I can use. Now, what I'm going to do now is just add a few more shadows here. And that might take me to the end of this stage. So we've got, I've mentioned a couple of times that I'm anxious not to have very strong shadows as per in a very sunny day. Even the one we did 2 weeks ago had more sunshine coming on to it than this one. So but I am going to have shadows. There are shadows underneath where the snow is coming down the edge of the roofs and underneath where the snow gathers above the chimneys and underneath the ledges and one or two things like that. So the way I'm going to do that is mix up a shadow color. But I'm quite keen that it softens, it doesn't become a hard shadow. Now, there are a number of ways that you could do this. One way, which is a bit of a laborious way of doing it, would be to, I won't do that. Yes, I'll show it to you, but I'm not sure I'll do it. One way would be to say, for instance, get some clear water, and let's do it on the top here. I know I'm now not working from left to right, but I'm just breaking my own rules. But so if I run this clear water, just a bit of it under here, you can't see it, but it is wet. Okay, it's just a little bit wet. And then if I mix up a shadow color, so what I'll do is I'll say go for a bit of cobalt and a little bit of burnt sienna, something like that. Fairly strong, because I'm going into something wet. That's too brown. Something like that maybe. And if I paint my shadows there, just sort of along or near the edge of where the water is, can you see it's sort of, so I can put a bit more blue in that, I think. Can you see how it's painting itself? It's a great thing about watercolors. Generally speaking, it will paint a lot better than you will. So just let it get on with it. There, so that's where it's touching the water, is just softening it down a little bit as we look at it, a soft edge to it. The other way of doing it would be to get that shadow. Let's do that here. Just pick up a shadow, cobalt blue I'm using, and a little bit of burnt sienna. Well, that's too much. It's gone too brown. Okay, and let's say we're going to put in some shadow here and here, and then put your water underneath that a little bit, and however you want to do it. It's just softening it down a little bit here. So I'm going to go around and do the second bit, but I'm going to bring some shadows and pop them here and into the snow. I'm going to make them a little bit blue. So I think I'll go back to my cerulean blue here and start putting some shadows in. So this is fairly strong paint just at the moment, but I'm going to throw some water at it in just a second. So all these little bits that we drew earlier and left to be the to show us where the snow was, and then I'm just picking up some water and dropping a little bit here, and just let it paint itself. Again, so different from painting in the sunshine in Tuscany and so forth, where you've got these strong shadows. I'm just having to use a much lighter touch, and let's put some of those shadows here, and I'm going to put some shadows in this bit of snow here. So in fact I've switched back to cerulean blue because it's a cooler one. I can add little bits of red later on. So I've got cerulean blue, a little bit of burnt sienna, gone a bit, just something like that. And let's just put in some just catching the snow. And if I want it to soften a bit in one or two places, let's only need to do it occasionally, just a little bit of softness. So I showed you sort of two ways of doing it, whichever way you feel more comfortable with, but we're just trying to get some hard edges and some soft edges. I'm going to make this shadow area here a little bit darker where it's coming under the tree. And I think we'll leave that for the moment, and then move round, because I think I'll call that more or less finished for this stage. Move on and do this in one or two places, and then we're into coming in with the details a little bit later on. So I'm going to come in now with some shadows down here. Now this building in the distance, I've said a couple of times, I don't want to make that as positive a building as as maybe these are here, but let's just put and I'll just add some water to that, soften it a bit. Okay, and I can leave the snow. I'll deal with that when come. So I'm going to bring in some shadows here. I'm going to redo these a little bit because I wanted them to be a bit bluer. So I don't think they worked fine the first time. Just go back to my cerulean blue. Make that a bit bluer, cerulean blue, and that's quite strong. So I'm going to add some water to that in a moment. Let's just bring in a bit of water and see if that's going to help to soften those a bit, just a touch here and there. It doesn't happen instantly, you've just got to wait for it. Let's put up some shadows in this snow on the roof. Right, that's me finished for this phase. I think I'll just get rid of that yellow. I think just reduce that a wee bit. And there we go. I'm going to put in some trees up here, the darkness up here. Not do anything else to any of the background. Going to paint over that. I want to try and make this area in here. Let's put that there. I want to try and make this area in here look as if we're sort of going down around the back of this house and into the church, if you like, and that goes around the back here. And one or two little touches where I think it might just give a little bit of emphasis to some of the depth, and maybe some of the windows, but really not a great deal. Nowhere near as I might do if it were strong sunshine. So let's do the trees first, and we'll work down here and then see where it takes us. Now I'm going to use for this. I'm going to use my mauve. I've got here this permanent mauve, which, if you don't have it, is pretty much a ultramarine blue and crimson red mixture, and that will give you a mauve. A mauve tends to be a little bit more red than on the red side of the purple. And there is a story, I just top of my head, but I'm not going to go through it, about mauve and how it was. I must look it up, or look it up yourself. It's quite an interesting story of how it came about, and there's a history to it. But so I'm going to use my mauve, and I'm going to mix that with some of this sap green here. So again, if you haven't got sap green, something very similar would be the cerulean or cadmium yellow, and a bit of cobalt, I would have thought, something along those lines. But but if you see what I'm doing here, I'm not, I want to add a little bit more warmth to the color than I put in this sketch here, which was probably Payne's Gray or something like that. And I want this to help me bring the snow forward on these buildings, but I don't want to make it too dominant, this whole thing. I just want to indicate some trees here and bring that down to something a bit darker here before I move on to the rest of it. So I'll start off mixing a color. Whether I end up adding water to it to lighten it, or adding there's a color that I haven't used and I probably won't use today up here, which is neutral tint. And that's quite a useful color if you want to just drop it in to make something dark quite quickly. It's a very translucent color. Its equivalent would be Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray is a much more opaque color. So neutral tint's quite good because it tends not to block things out too much, but I don't think I'll need it here. I'm trying to keep a light touch on everything here to keep that overall feel of it being a snowy winter. So I've got my mauve here, which is actually called permanent mauve, this one, but there we go. And I'm going to put some of this sap green into it now. Let's see what that gives me. Again, if I go back to it, I'm trying to pinch an idea from Ciego with this sort of mauve he put in here. I want to make mine stronger than that, but it's looking at that mauve, and I thought that worked quite well in his painting. Let's see what we get out of that. I'll make that color stronger because I can always add water to it to water it down. That's quite strong at the moment. And I'll use this brush, and also I think I'll bring in this brush, which is a sword brush. It's like a rigger, which I might use a rigger in a moment. It's a bit like the rigger, but it holds a lot more water, and it's even more difficult to use. I mean, more unpredictable than the rigger is. Rigger's great. It does all sorts of things. One of the most useful things about a rigger is you can paint on the side of the brush. But I may use that for one or two little details. But I want to try and get some of the looseness of the trees up here by using this sword brush. And let's see where that takes me down to. So I've got this mixture here. It's quite strong. Remember, if in doubt, have your paints a little bit stronger because they will always dry lighter. I want to do two things, sort of give a sense of these trees, but not too dominant. I want the sky to come through, and I want to bring some of it down to the snow on the roofs here. Let's start over here. And just using the side of the brush a little bit here, and then the point of the brush might be some places where we can go a little bit more with our if you wanted to, just adding a little bit of water, for instance, here might soften some of it. I want to do as little as I can to get away with this. Around the snow on this building might be quite useful. And then some suggestion that see, this brush it's not difficult to control in the sense that it is difficult. It's just that it's uncontrollable, really, and relatively uncontrollable. Let's come in down here. This is going to be a little more solid with this area which is sort of disappearing down the back. I've added some water to that just to soften some of those edges. Bring that down here. This is going to suggest the snow is building up here. Yeah, that's probably enough. And similarly over here, it's going around the back of the building. Let's go around that chimney a little bit. And let's put some, I'm using the edge of the brush here to create some sort of feeling of the branches forming. Sort of getting lost. Let's bring a few. I'm running out of paint here, so let me just mix up some more. That's quite strong at the moment, so this is where I'm just want to do enough to give a sense that there's snow showing around here. And because some of this is already wet, I put in some stronger paint here, and that will work its way into the soft. So we're almost there. I don't think I want to do too much more than that. Let's just take it down here. Right, let's call that a day. And you danger of overworking it if I'm not careful, just put a little bit. Right, moving on down the picture here. Where do I want to add one or two little bits of emphasis? Very, very little, really. I think I can. I'll bring my rigger out here or maybe even use this. Go back to this squirrel. So right, this is all too strong. This, so let's mix up a darker grey. I'm going to use my colour a little stronger than the greys I've mixed up so far. Cerulean and burnt sienna. And let's see whether just touching one or two little points in here, just to give a little bit of emphasis. This building, I didn't want to show up too much. One or two little points in the snow. Let's put a bit here. And I think you go around your paintings and put in your little accents. I think accents is probably quite a good word here. Just, I don't want to do too much, just a little bit under that snow. quite often if you want to, instead of adding water, if you just wanted to soften an edge, you can just put your finger on it, touch it, and that spreads it a wee bit, just as I did there. I'm going to soften that little bit there. And if as you're going through this, you wanted to make any of these a little darker, just by all means do so. But I'm just trying to keep as light a touch as I can on the overall painting. And now, any more to the snow. I'm going back to my cerulean and just put a few little bits here. I want to bring in a little bit of warmth to some of these cooler colors that I've done here, and I'll do that in conjunction with this lighter cerulean. Here we go. Let's just lose that around the corner, because I remember my sketch that I just made some comment in my sketch about it being darker around there. And so some warmer colors. Burnt sienna. I've used burnt sienna a lot as a sort of warmer color here. Let's just one or two little touches near where, particularly where I've just added. I've forgotten where I did add the paint, but just one or two little bits. If you look at Monet's paintings of snow, if you ever get a chance to go back to a gallery again, and it's amazing just how many warm colors he has in here, the shadows around his snow. Much more than I'm doing. I think I'll just make that a little bit darker. So partially because it's, I use my thumb on that, my fingerprint, partially because it's close to us. And I just want to bring it forward a little bit. It's a sort of compositional thing almost, just there. And let's have a little bit of warmth. I think that's it. I think that's it. Certainly I'm going to abandon it at this stage. Now, yes, just before I go on, I just wonder if I can lose that building a little bit more. I might just throw a shadow over that. Pick up cerulean. Just something light. I just wonder whether to yeah, that'll do. And when it's dry, that's the time to get your rubber out and rub it down and see what you got left. Still a bit too wet to do that, so I'll just leave it to dry on its own, and then when it's dried, I'll photograph it and send the picture to you, Lois. Or I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just make this door a little bit warmer. Just having a look at it, so just a smidge warmer. Let's see if that might add something to So that was burnt sienna. Let's have a look. If I get some burnt sienna and add a little bit of this red to it, just ever so slightly, warm it up a little bit. Yeah, it's only a little thing, but it's just a sort of feature of the painting. It's in the foreground, bit like that, where I did something there. I've done something here just to bring it forward and maybe help to say something about all the rest of it being so cold. And that, my dear friends, is where I'm stopping with this.